everyone, welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about the laws of exponents and the more advanced part of exponents. So this is around for about grade 6 to grade 8. Also, if you are looking for the basics for exponent, I'll leave a link to that in the comments down below. Make sure to check that out if you're still working on the basics. So let's just get started. Exponents can be written as integers and fractions. So assuming that we already know what fractions are, integers are all types of numbers, negative numbers, positive numbers, all of those. So every single number on the number line, including the negative numbers. So an example of that would be like -2 to the power of 4, or 2/3 to the power of 2, or 24 to the power of 6, etc., etc. So if you see how I have parentheses around here, around this part and this part, we'll go further into that later on, but we're still just starting out here. So I'll explain that later on. And another thing a lot of people get confused on when working with exponents is that any exponent with the power of 1 equals that same number. So if I have, say, 4 to the power of 1, that would equal 4. And if I have 6 to the power of 1, that would equal 6. But only if it is to the power of 1, it would equal the same number. If it has, like, say, 6 to the power of 2, that would still mean 6 times 6. 6 times itself 2 times. But only if it is within power of 1, it would mean the same number. So that's something that a lot of kids get confused on. So now that we'll talk about the laws of exponents, and these laws are like actual laws. Like if you come across something like this is what you're gonna have to do, what you're gonna have to follow. So the first law is that if you have an exponent like, say, 4 over 5, 4/5 to the power of 3, the power would only go, in this case, to the 4, because it's on top of the 4, because there aren't any parentheses. So it would only be 4 to the power of 3, which would be 4 times 4 times 4, 3 times, over 5. So 4 times 4 is 16, and 16 times 4 is 64. So the answer would be 64 over 5. And obviously we would turn it into a mixed fraction and simplify and everything, and that would turn out to be 12 and 4/5. But that's how we're going to do it, because there aren't any parentheses. But if we add parentheses to it, like instead of having it without parentheses, 4/5 parentheses to the power of 3, that means the power goes to the whole fraction. So it would be 4/5 times 4/5 times 4/5, and that would be how we do it. So if it has parentheses in a fraction, that means it goes for the whole fraction, and if it has no parentheses, that means it only goes for the top number, which would be the numerator. Okay, so now let's look at the second law. So what the second law says is that it says if the exponent expression, which is a problem including exponents, is a multiplication problem, multiplying the same fraction, like say we have 2/3 to the power of 2 times 2/3 to the power of 3, it says that you can take the powers, so the powers of 2 and 3, add them together. So 2 plus 3 would equal 5. And so we're just going to do that. 2 plus 3 equals 5. And then you can put both of these fractions as one number. So if we did that, we would have 2/3 and we put the power with this new number. So 2 plus 3. Remember, the added power equals 5. We put the 5 here, and then we just solve it out, and that would be our answer. And so the formula for this, remember the formula is how you do it using variables. So the formula for this would be, so the formula, I'm just going to write F here to stand for the formula. The formula would be, so A over B, that would be the fraction with the power of, let's say, M multiplied by A over B. So just remember that if it has the same variable for two numbers, that means that those two numbers are the same. So how you see how I have AB here and AB here, right? So this means that whatever fraction this is, this would be the same fraction. So, and then the exponent, the power for this fraction would be, let's say, n. What we would do AB. Remember, we put it together as 1. So we take this, put it together as 1, and we do n plus m, or m plus n, doesn't really matter. And that would be our answer. So we add both the exponents and put the fractions together as 1, and this would be how we do the second law. Okay, so now let's talk about the third law of exponents. So the third law, what the third law says is that for division, so in the second law we were talking about multiplication, this time we're talking about division. So in division, if the fractions are the same, so the fractions are supposed to be the same, like how we had it in the other problem. So if the fractions are the same, then the first exponent's power is greater than the second exponent's power. So before we get on further, I'm going to write this down. So it says it's a division problem and the fractions are the same. So I'm going to use the same fractions we used for the second law. So we're going to do, let's say, 2/3. That's what we did in the last law. We're going to do it to the power of 4 divided by, since it said it was a division problem, divided by, and it said the same fraction, and I'm going to put the power as 2. So I have it as a division problem, and both of the fractions are the same, and it doesn't matter if the exponents are the same or not, okay? So let's read on. So if the first exponent's power, so remember the whole thing is the exponents. So the first exponent's power, which is the 4 in this case, is greater than the second exponent's power. So this is the second exponent and this is the second exponent's power. So if the first exponent's power is greater than the second exponent's power, which it is, because 4 is greater than 2, then what you can do to make it easier is you can subtract the first power and the second power and make the two fractions one fraction. So what it's saying is that we can take the powers and we can subtract them. So we can do 4 minus 2, second power from the first power. So it would be the first power minus the second power. And 4 minus 2 would equal to 2. And we bring the two fractions as 1, like how we did in the other problem. So it would be 2/3, because we bring it into 1. And we put the difference, the answer of the problem we just did, which is 2. And that would be your answer, and you could solve it out if it says to solve it out. So let's just write the formula for this law. So I'm just going to write an F standing for formula here. And so the formula would be A over B, and we're going to have M again. M divided by, see how it's division, A over B, because it's the same fraction like I said, and we're going to have N, and equals, if M is greater than N, so we have it that B, we bring it into one fraction, and M is greater than N, So then we would have it that A, B, we would have m minus n. So basically what it's saying, we bring the two fractions to 1, and if the first power is greater than the second power, then we subtract it. So like we have here, so m is greater than n, right? So we subtract m and n, and that would be our answer like we did in here. So the next one we're going to do is basically a Law 3 Part 2, because it basically is using the same basic question, but just a new concept. So in the first question we had the first Part 1 of the Law 3. We had it as a division problem, and with the fractions being the same. So that's the same thing we're going to be using for this question. So I'm going to use the same fraction just to make it life a little bit easier. So 2/3, and I'm going to put the exponent as 2 this time, divided by the same fraction, 2/3 with the power of 4. So the concept we're trying to see here is, in the last concept we said that the first power was greater than the second power. But now what happens if the second power is greater than the first power? So what we're going to do now is we're going to do basically a little bit of the same thing we did last time. This is a little bit more complicated. So we're going to take the the two fractions, and we're going to put them as 1. So we're going to take them and put it as 1, so 2/3. Right? Okay, so we put them both as 1, but we're going to put it as a fraction over 1. So that's how we're going to have it. So then what do is we take the second power and we subtract it with the first power. So we're just going to take this one and subtract it with this one. So 4 minus 2, which would equal 2, right? So then what we're going to have it as 1 and then 2/3, and we're going to put the answer here. So we're going to have 2. Now, in my other, so to divide fractions, if you don't really know how to do that, I have a link to my other video where I show how to divide fractions in the comments below, so you can check that out if you don't know how to divide fractions. So to divide fractions, so basically, when we have this, we're basically dividing the numerator from the denominator. So I'm going to use a different question here just to explain what I'm trying to say. So say we have 4/6, and I know that's not simplified. That would also basically mean that 4 is being divided by 6. So that's what it means. So now if we use that same thing for this question we have here, it would be 1 divided by 2/3 with the power of 2. Now, like I said, I'll have a link to my other video in the comments down below, so you can check that out if you don't know how to divide fractions. So we're just going to solve this. So eventually it would become 1 times 3/2, and even though we flipped the fraction, because we have to keep the first number, switch division to multiplication, flip the fraction so that the the top goes to the bottom and the bottom goes to the top. Even if we switched it, we're still going to keep the exponent the same. So the exponent is still going to be for the whole number. And then so 1 times this fraction would equal, obviously, the same number. So this would be our answer. Now you can turn this into a mixed number, this fraction part into a mixed number, and it would still be the same answer and everything. But the reason I'm not going to do that is because when you solve it out, like when you actually solve it out, it'll give you an extra step, because you're going to have to change it from mixed number back to improper and then solve it. But now, since it's already in improper, you can go right ahead and solve it out. But if in the question it tells you to change it into a mixed fraction, or if your teacher tells you to change it into a mixed fraction, then you're going to want to change it to a mixed fraction. So that would be our answer. Now let's just write the formula. And I'm just going to, the formula is pretty long, so I'm just going to make a whole section just for the formula. So the formula, how it's going to go, is we have the AB, again, already, AB, and we have the M divided by AB with the power of N, and we're going to say that, and we're going to put it together. AB, you put it together, and the N is greater than the M. Then what we're going to do is we're going to have it over 1. We're going to have the 1, and then we're going to put the fraction right here. So we're going to have a B, and then we have N minus M. And we're just going to say, just to make life a little bit easier, we're going to say that it equals O, okay? That's an O. And after that, what we do is we do 1 divided by A, B over O, and that would eventually lead us to having a B over A over with the exponent of O. Now, what formulas do for us is that it makes it really easy for us to know what to do. So that helps out a lot. Also, this also may seem really confusing, but if you practice it enough times, and eventually you'll get the hang of it. Okay, so now let's talk about the fourth law. So what the fourth law says is that if you have a question like, let's say, 2 to the power of 3, and you have parentheses here, and then you have the 2 here. So if you have something like this with any parentheses, what you're going to want to do is you're going to multiply these two powers together. So it would be 2 times with the power of 3 times 2, which equals, so 3 times 2 equals 6. So then the answer would be 2 to the power of 6. And if we solve that out, which would be 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, it would eventually equal 64. And that would be our answer. Now we can also work this out with fractions the same way. So say we had a question like 4 over 11, and we have parentheses here, and we have 2 to the power of 3 again, and we're going to use some curly brackets since we already used parentheses right here, so we're going to use some curly brackets, and we have here 4. So we would do it the same way. So we would take the powers, multiply them together. So it would be 4 over 11. And to the power of 3 times 4. And 3 times 4 equals 12. So the answer would be 4 over 11, parentheses, to the power of 12. And that would be our answer. Okay, so now that we've talked about all the laws of exponents, there are some other concepts that that just tell us what to do if we get this type of scenario. So the first other concept is that if you have a negative exponent, and I know a lot of kids have a question on this. So if we have, and I'm going to write this as a formula first. So if we have a fraction AB, and I forgot to say that the laws I wrote about, they were all presented as fractions, and just wanted to say that the laws, they work the same exact way if they were integers, whole numbers, positive, negative numbers, any numbers, or fractions, anything. So they work the same way. So if we have a negative power. So we have the power of n, negative power. What we would do is we would just switch the bottom to the top and the top to the bottom, and we would put b at the top and a at the bottom, and we would just make the exponent positive, so it would just be n. And if we work this out as an example, and we used 2/6 here, and we have it to the power of 2, and I know I didn't simplify that, and we have it -2, right? And if we want, now what we would do to it, we would take the bottom to the top and the top to the bottom, and we would put the 6 the top, 2 to the bottom, and we would make the power positive, so that this would be our answer, and we could just work it out. Okay, now let's talk about the second other concept. Now, what the second one says is that if we have a fraction or any number, a, b, and we have it with the power of 0. Now, if we have it with a power of 0, it would automatically just equal 1. So, for example, if we have fraction 2/6, or again, with the power of 0, or we have 3 with the power of 0, that would just automatically mean that it equals 1. And these are the other concepts. Thank you so much for watching my video. I hope this was easy. Make sure to comment down below any suggestions or any questions you have, or any ideas for new videos that I can make. And please subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys all next time. Bye!